Hello! Good day everyone! Welcome to the new episode of our video in math. If you are a student teacher like me, take time to watch this video because it might be helpful for you. Through this video, we will talk about things to consider in planning instructions for mathematics in the primary grades. In planning, there are many things that you need to consider in order to deliver a successful unit or lesson. First thing that we need to consider is content. Next is objectives. Here, third one is the classroom environment. Then, the materials and student. And lastly, we have the teachers. That we need to consider is our content. So in our content, we have to effectively prepare the lesson. Of course, as a teacher, we need to know what are we going to teach in order for us to effectively prepare the lessons. Also, research the subject matter that you will be teaching. You should consult the curriculum and teaching guides published by DepEd. Aside from books, you can visit websites that will give you information relevant to your subject area. You should master the contents of your lesson before you teach it. Remember, you cannot give what you do not have. Moreover, you would not want to teach wrong contents to the students. It is easier to learn than to unlearn, and it is difficult to take back wrong contents that have already been taught. You have a big responsibility as a teacher to master your contents. The second thing that you need to consider is our objectives. So, a specific statement of a learning outcomes, and also it is a vital in assessing students' learning and evaluating the effectiveness of instruction. So before you begin planning, you need to know what specific knowledge and skills you want your students to develop during the lesson or unit. So as a teacher, you have to evaluate first what are your goals in teaching or in learning. Sometimes there are teachers that often focus too much on knowledge and forget about developing skills, which in the long term are more important than knowing mere facts. So, in planning your instructions, always consider both knowledge and skills. Okay? So, the next thing that you need to consider is our classroom environment. So in classroom environment, students learn more when there is a positive classroom environment. Of course, if they feel comfortable, they will learn easily. Next is teachers should have to ensure that they have a welcoming and stimulating classroom. So, and the teacher must foster a healthy environment to students interact to each other. Make sure that no child being excluded. The next thing that we need to consider is materials. In our materials, there are any item, tool, or piece of equipment used to support the lesson before, during, or after instruction. So this may come first in our visual aids, media equipment, realia, manipulatives, tools, or printed sources. So it is also recommended for teachers that in selecting instructional materials, we should use materials that are appealing to all different senses of children's or your students, especially in their sense of hearing, sight, and touch. Would be the top sense where would be the top senses that contribute the most in learning. thing that we need to consider is the students. So the students is the heart of the learning process. Remember that they were the center and the most important in learning process. They were the reason why the teacher creating an instructional materials or instructional planning for them to learn. So, utilized scaffolding for those students who are struggling in the lesson. And get to know your students, where they came from, what their interests are, and what they already know, their learning styles, attention span, and special needs, and etc. This will help you determine your student needs, and remember that you need to prepare your lessons with all your students in mind, and that your main goal should be meet their needs and offer them a learnings and their preferred way. Knowing your students will also help you build the rapport with them, which is important if you want your students to be freely sharing their ideas with you and their classmates. Okay, so the last thing that we need to consider in planning instructions is the teacher. So the teacher is the responsible for teaching the curriculum. So in planning instruction, it is important for the teacher to take into account their own knowledge and for instructions to become more effective. Especially now that the kids are more likely in technology. As a teacher, you need to be updated with the new or the latest technologies to consider. And taking into account the teacher knowledge is important not only in assessing one state of current knowledge and skills, but also in ensuring the effectiveness of delivery instructions to our students. So especially if you are teaching a primary grades, you have to be careful on what learnings you want your pupils to acquire. Those are the 6 things that you need to consider in planning instructions for mathematics in primary grades. So, I hope that you learned something and that would help you in your journey. Thank you for watching. Again, this is Roname P. Villarosa.